Hello everyone, before the show starts, I just want to say a huge thank you to Watchful Eye Security, who from now on are our main sponsors. We're so grateful to Callum and the brilliant team they've got over there. If you're curious about Watchful Eye Security or you've got security needs, then head over to watchfuleye-ss.co.uk, or you can find them on Facebook or Instagram. They're one of the country's most exciting new security companies, and they're reliable and they're brilliant. I've worked with them before, and that's why it's an honour to have them sponsor us. So head over to their pages, and thank you so much, guys. I appreciate it. Hello, welcome to the Steve Calis show. Sorry, all right, too much wine. Let me do a proper intro. Hello, welcome to the Steve Calis show. I'm joined by Chandrika Phea. Is that correct? Did I do it right that time?
That's good enough.
Yeah. Thanks very much. So this episode represents an important part of the series, because the last few episodes we've been speaking to people, and they've been wonderful episodes, but we've been speaking to people who've been dealing with terrible grief, and their stories are about overcoming these awful things that people have to, like child loss and homicide, and these crazy stories. Mm-hmm. So talking with you about what we're going to talk about today is, for me, a sort of palate cleanser. This is where I'm sort of comfortable and happy to talk about. And if you don't mind, would you mind telling us your story, who you are, what you're doing, your book, which we can see tactically just behind you? Lord, I don't want to buy a question. Ta-da! There it is. So if you wouldn't mind, tell us a little something about yourself, and then we'll sort of roll from there.
Sure. Let me turn this volume down on my phone. Didn't realize it wasn't on silent. My name is Chandrika. I was born Midwest, United States, in what is called the Bible Belt.
I've heard that. So what does that? Does that mean? Is that the connotation being that it's a heavily religious sort of part of the country?
Right. I would really say even more so conservative, if you want to think of it from a political standpoint.
Okay. Right.
Politics or morality or moral, conservative, not open hardly at all. And so I'm from Oklahoma City, what I might call barbecue nation. Oklahoma City, Texas, Kansas. I think Kansas is here, Oklahoma City, Texas. I live in the South now, in Georgia, and I've not found any barbecue here at all.
That's a travesty.
I've not found. So, I actually stopped trying. I won't even waste my money to try to find it. And so, people say all the time, no, the barbecue here is just different. I'm like, what barbecue?
Where is it? Yeah.
And so, I'm from the Midwest. Was born into a religious family of Christians. I'm a Black woman, African American, and so I was born into the kind of Christianity that is very demonstrative, very charismatic in their expression of religion and religious practices, called Pentecostal. And so I graduated from high school, not really knowing what I wanted to do myself. Ended up going to a HBCU, a Black college, for 2 years, pursuing a degree in computer science. But really, at some point, 2 years in, felt led to pursue a degree in biblical studies. And so I left Langston University, enrolled in a Bible college there in Oklahoma City. And I stayed with that degree for 2 years before I moved to Columbus, Georgia, to serve a ministry here. And so that time expired, and I had an opportunity after that to go and live and teach, do missions in China. I left here, left Georgia, went to San Diego for 2 weeks to train, got on a plane, went to China, and my goal was to change China.
That's an admirable goal.
That was my goal, to change the whole country. And my goal was to go and make them all Christians. And so I'm so serious. I mean, I was going to change China, you know.
Great.
So I got there and began to teach and be approached, of course, by my students who kind of became interested in my belief system. And we started a Bible study. I did it for 2 years with 7 students. And I came back to the States, not feeling like I fit in my religious practice anymore. Only for it to be revealed to me that I was not teaching my students Christianity. I had been teaching them what I believed to be the love of God, but it was uh, my interpretation, if you will, or my experience of the love of God without Christianity. Um, it it's a whole it's interesting that I couldn't be a Christian in China, but while I was there, I didn't realize that. I was doing what I needed to do to be safe, but while there, I couldn't wear a crucifix. I couldn't wear a jacket that had God or Jesus on it. They were tapping my phone, spying on my emails. Um, they were following me to stores and restaurants, trying to see if I was starting an underground church. And so,
Oh, I see. Blimey.
yeah, so everything we can do in Western world or outside of a communist country to show our religious beliefs, you cannot do there unless not live in peace. You can't. And um, so I really had to learn, or really kind of come to figure out what it was I believed God represented to me without all of the shrubbery, the fig leaves, as I write in the book, the everything that identified my beliefs. Who am I without all of those things?
Mhm.
If I wanted to stay, I had to figure that out. And one thing led to another. I was there 2 years, ended up coming home, couldn't fit, really felt like I couldn't breathe going back to church and Western religious practice. I uh, um, found myself really struggling with what seemed to be a very small or a much smaller perspective of God. I had gone and seen, a different part of the world, and I've had to adjust to make sure I left an impact. And I come back and I'm like, God, who are these people talking about? I don't know who this God is.
Right.
Like,
I
you know what
see.
I mean?
Yeah.
And so between that and having then a Black president, um, our evangelical Christians here in the Western world were not happy with having a Black president, and they were being expressive about it. Um, I remember watching the news one day, and a pastor had invited his grandson up to the stage in the church to sing a racist song about having a Black president. And I was horrified at that. I turned the TV off. So here it is again. I'm trying to adjust or can't breathe with Western religious practice as I had always done it. And then this is happening as well with this, with our white Christians in the States, many of them being upset that we have a Black president. I turned the TV off, watching that man allow his grandson to sing that song in a sanctuary. I got up from my couch, began to start cleaning up my apartment. I went to the front door to pick up some shoes that I had taken off. And when I stood, I exhaled out of my being out loud, Lord, I don't want to die a Christian. Um, and I was shocked at what had come out of my mouth. And that led to my next step literally in my next step in taking my shoes where they belong. I said, that's a book. And then my next step was, I wasn't planning on writing a book. So, in considering writing it, I just kind of began to pray about how to do this. What am I writing? What is this book supposed to be? And I believe I heard God tell me that I had already been writing it. It was my journal entries or my emails back to my friends and family here in the States while I was in China.
Cool.
The thing is, though, looking at those emails in that present time of hearing these words, I was different. My belief system had evolved. And so in my book it starts out with me revisiting those emails, those journal entries, revisiting that Chandrika and watching how she has evolved, and then writing from that current time. And so a lot of the front of the book is that. And then after a while, you start to read where I'm writing in present time. There's hardly any PSs. So, there's an original journal entry and then there's a PS. And the PS is me now reading what I wrote while I was in China. Go ahead. You were going to ask a question.
No. I'm just. I've got a few as you were talking. I'm
Okay.
sort of just keen to explore your journey there. So for context, when it comes to religiosity or belief, I've been on something of a roller coaster myself because and just to frame where my questions are going to come from. So I grew up with the automatic belief in God that you sort of have. You have a sort of default Christianity, especially in the UK, I find, because our grandparents were heavily Christian. That's just the sort of nature of the country. So, and when I got into my teens and 20s, when you sort of think you know everything at that age, don't you? You think you sort of take on the world at that age, you know everything. And I became atheist and staunchly atheist at that time as well. I was reading all of the now really annoying sort of atheist texts, Dawkins and Hitchens and Harrison. I was really involved in the sort of atheist movement, and then certainly now I look back and I think, what was I doing? But I was sort of caught up and I was convinced of atheism. Mm-hmm. And then as my late 20s and as I hit 30, that completely changed. It got derailed, and now I believe in something different. And I'm still trying to figure out what it is. It's not, and this is the question I'm going to loop around to get to you, is my sort of belief now is that there is a something unfathomable. There is a something where we are too human to properly perceive the power, the majesty, the love, whatever you want to describe and whatever you want to attribute to that thing. Right. And the way I like to describe it is, and you might have heard this before, is that if you picture a ant or an insect beside a dog, beside a human, beside a mountain, on top of that mountain is a dragon, and you start to conceive of the different perceptions that each one of those characters in that scenario has. Right. Who in that image is perceiving the whole thing? Mm-hmm. The ant certainly isn't. The ant doesn't know, might not know the dog's there. The dog might see the human, but not know the mountain's there. And so I think that when it comes to God, we're sort of in that. We haven't got 98% of the picture because we're far too human to understand. And what comes to mind a lot as well is the old saying, if horses could paint, they would paint horse gods. And I think we want God to be this human sort of father figure, but I think that might be the case, but we're just putting a human sort of narrative on it. So I think whilst I'm now sort of sure that there is something omnipotent and potent and powerful, I've hit a frustrating sort of point where I go, I'm too human to know what it is. So this is why, so your journey is fascinating because would you say it was a case of, well, actually, everything I associate with American Christianity and American Christianity is just that, is American Christianity. But what you're left with when you strip that away is a purer sort of faith. I mean, is that the situation you sort of found yourself in? Because you go, well, what is this thing? And then I'm worshiping and praying to, and
Right. I think what I was left with stripping all of that away was being curious again about what it all is. And what words and what experiences I would have to help me articulate whatever my resolve is. So it's not necessarily the purest faith in that I have now come to believe in God apart from Christianity. It is the stripping away of Christianity to now be curious about what it all is. Like, it's that naked. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? It's
That's
that.
fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah, it's that. It's after reading the Bible from Genesis to Revelation, I got real close to wondering, is God even a real thing?
Mhm.
But having certain experiences of life that I cannot contribute to being human says to me that there is something greater, and it doesn't have to have this name God.
Yeah.
It's again our best effort at trying to identify what this omniscience is.
Yeah, that's part. So you're saying, like, would you say it's almost a case of going, you don't tell me what God is, I will explore what that is, and I will find out what God means. So,
You're
yeah.
talking good. You're talking good, Stephen. You're talking good. But my tone is a bit different in that, I'm not saying you don't tell me, but I am saying that I'm going to take the freedom to. So the thing is, I write in the book, I have an entry in the book called Ology. And I talk about what the word theology means. It means the study of God. And then I spell out Christianity. What Christianity does, it does not have its own study of God. It studies of God. So,
yeah, you're right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So well, at least with Western Christianity, for sure. So we all go to our churches, our places, and we take our Bibles and whatever versions they are, and we open them and we say, turn to Paul's study of God. That's what we're really saying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Everybody's claiming to have these theologies, and my theology is, and then you ask, well, what is that based on? It's based on Genesis chapter 3 verse. No, that's not your theology. That's Moses's theology. That's Moses's study of God. And so if they have the opportunity to study this omniscience or press into the notion of something greater and then give interpretation to it, then why don't I have the same freedom?
Yeah. Sure.
So it's not, it's not the attitude of, you're not going to tell me. It's, no, if they had the same freedom, then I have the same freedom. And I think their intent, I don't think the intent of documenting these experiences was for me to study their experiences, but to say, hey, just in case you believe something else is greater, we did too, so you're not alone. But this is what we believe that something greater is or was. And often I believe they got it wrong.
Yeah.
In their
I'm with you. And that's I think when I started to, even when I was in my most naive atheist, take on the world sort of phase, I think I still held a real affection, because I've traveled a lot and I spent a lot of time traveling Europe, and that was always my sort of maiden love. And I always kept a real affection for religious practice to a degree, and the traditions especially, and everything that sort of comes with it, because I think it's a fascinating look into human psychology and sociology, and I think it's amazing. I mean, when I see especially what happens in America, I mean, America and Britain have vastly different ways of celebrating the Lord, and this and I love some of the ways that Americans sort of are completely in. This is I love God, I love Jesus. We celebrate, we sing, and that's and when I had my sort of atheist hat on, I could go, man, that's such a great expression of love. And I do see the root of what all of that is, and it's we're sort of going, who are we? Why are we here? What does this mean? Why do I intuit something profound without being able to properly describe what it is? And then there's a pre-made sort of architecture there in religion, And he goes, man, actually, that makes sense. That actually fits why I'm feeling this way, and it gives me somewhere to channel my affection for being alive, my pride, my love, and so it makes sense. The religious discourse in America and the UK, whilst at times frayed, I think is a beautiful expression of humanity, and I think it's a very real thing with who we are. And so, where are you at the moment? I mean, have you managed to get clarity? I mean, what is your sort of views and feelings on it?
You know, if I'll say that I celebrate you celebrating.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
The expression of of Christians in the States, but for me, I see it more as something that often divides us. It doesn't bring us together. It's this is how we see God over here, and this is how we'll celebrate, and this is how y'all see God over there. Like no one, there's no a lot of times everybody's wearing the same banner, but we're divided.
Yeah.
Makes sense. And
Yeah,
so
of course. Yeah, yeah. I would. Yeah, I will add that as a caveat. I mean, that's what you wrestle with most when you're, especially when you're atheism, or you're questioning that whole thing. I found is you go, man, how could something be so beautiful, such a lovely expression
right,
of what we're trying to do, and also have such evil and harrowing consequences for
right,
humankind. So yeah,
right.
I'm right there with you. Yeah.
I saw a picture today of a burning cross in a yard or a church, and the person who posted it said, "I can't believe Christians stood by and watched this."
Mm.
So you know, I'm not even sure often that what how we've chosen to express ourselves as it relates to love and faith is what God really desires versus love your neighbor
Mm.
as you love yourself. You know what I'm saying? Like, so the expression of it all, I think is the easiest part.
Yeah.
Um, Getting to know your neighbor, getting to know the differences, and still reaching out your hand in love, to me is the greatest expression of love or religious practice. I write about visiting a Jewish synagogue for the first time, and how they were not receptive of me. I asked them would they help me to throw like a barbecue for our apartment complex that was directly across the street from them,
Mm.
and they said no, we don't do that.
They didn't mess with barbecues.
Back to that barbecue.
Yeah.
A cookout, a Jewish meal or something to bring
Yeah.
my apartment complex together as a group of people living across the street from a Jewish synagogue. So to bring all of those differences together in one, honoring the differences at the same time, learning what they are and using and exercising that muscle called love. It's easy to love people when they're the same.
Mhm.
That to me, that love is there and it works, but it's like having a weight
Yeah.
and exercising with it, and it's so light. The only thing you're doing is lifting it, but it's not impacting a muscle. It's like that to me. It's you're capable of lifting 100-pound weight, but you keep lifting a 5-pound weight. It's not impacting a muscle. It is moving though.
Mhm.
So to continue to surround yourself only with people that believe what you believe is being capable of doing more, but only moving a 5-pound weight. So I put myself in situations, especially when I first came back to China. I literally chose my apartment complex, the size of it, so that I could get to know my neighbors. I wanted my love muscle to be worked out. I wanted to learn the difference and not offer the agenda to offer Christianity if they weren't Christians. to offer salvation. I just wanted to be in a place where I could learn who people were, they could learn who I am, and we have relationship. Like that for me, that love muscle is now being worked out. There's this, resistance of that's not what I believe. That's not what I believe. And I keep pushing into it, into that friendship, into that relationship, despite that's not what I believe. That's not my preference. That's not my choice. And I just keep pushing into that resistance. And for me, that is the love muscle. I don't want to be, I write about the one of the ladies that was there at the Jewish synagogue saying to me, I wish that everybody were Jew. I said, I don't want to be a Jew, and neither do I want to be a Christian. I want to be your
Yeah.
neighbor. Can I be your neighbor first?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And
I suppose
so,
that's part of the parcel of the of that faith, though, isn't it? It's the try and bring everyone in, and isn't that that was always my hesitancy with Western religions in the first place, was the hey, we'll love you, but you gotta look the way we look and do the things we do,
right,
and you gotta
right.
it was it's conditional affection, which I think is a thing which you can reflexively rebel against.
Right.
Which is why, I remember a conversation I had with a guy. I was sat on a bench near my hometown, and a guy came up to me and started talking to me, and we had a great conversation about God and what we thought God was. And then that's when I first realized, before I went traveling, that we believe something very similar. Yours is just wearing something different, or yours is doing something different to mine. But the key component of, listen, there's a thing. This thing is powerful. I am in awe of this thing without properly, and I might be too human to be able to have the words to, and I might not have the vocabulary to describe what it is, but we're doing the same thing. The problem is he was entrenched in the whole, well, this person wrote this person wrote this, and as a result, my religion now looks like this, and I'm dedicated to the very human side of what that is. And that's what Christianity and all religions worldwide are, and that's how they seem to me. It's most of the time you're spent in the human aspect of what is this ethereal thing, going to church, you're going to man-made church, you're wearing these clothes, you're doing these rituals, in whatever religion you're in, and that's all very human. Whereas underneath all of that, I understand, and I do think it's beautiful, but ultimately you're trying to get at the thing on the other side of human interpretation, because there's something there. And something profound. That's what I'm still. Since my son was born a year ago, it's changed still, because I think I've learned that there are depths of love within me that I had no idea were there. This enormous well of. Sometimes I just look at him and I'm just emotional. I'm just crying. You must think I'm an emotional wreck, but because I'm just so proud of him, and I'm so and so I think, man, that's not for nothing. That's not a biological imperative. That loving him is a biological imperative, but being proud of him because, he's, I don't know, whatever he's doing, learning to walk and all this kind of stuff, that is a deep love. That's what I'm trying to worship, and that's what I'm trying to respect. So what does your faith look like now? Does it still have the sort of Christian components of, prayer and, all that sort of thing? Do you still do that sort of thing? Because I still find myself doing that, to be honest, now.
So prayer is probably the one and only component.
Yeah.
So I'm not a member of a church.
Do you miss that? Do you miss being part of a church?
In a sense, because of the part I played in it. Raised in church, I sing, I was a musician, and so I'm giving up, if you will, the spotlight. That's the human part of me. I was on stage. I love to sing, still love to sing. I love harmony. I love singing about God. But I don't believe a lot of what these songs are saying about God and about us. So I have that conviction of not showing up to do those things, and it's not what I believe anymore.
Yeah.
So I don't do it anymore. I'd rather be authentic in my relationship with God than to be authentic in my relationship with God while being what Christianity expects me to be on stage.
Sure.
So,
That's the wonderful thing about religion, is the community ethos and ethic. I would imagine that would be a difficult thing to find yourself separated and outside of, because that's
right.
a powerful thing. But then I think it might not always be the healthiest way to go in terms of well, there's religious conflict, and there's, like you said before, there's division in those communities, even in Christian communities, all the different
Mhm.
sort of groups that you can splinter group and cell groups, that
Right,
sort of thing. But I think,
right,
how else would you, as a thought experiment, I think, how else would I bring people together? Because the sense of community I live in a small town, and even now there's not really a sense of community. There's a few people who want to imbue that community and bring something to the town, but for the most part, people are living their own lives. They're busy, they're in debt, or they're, that sort of thing. And I think, man, politics is not the way to go, because that's even more divisive than religion,
right, right.
especially now, and especially in America, from what I can see, because I try and follow American politics. I find it just fascinating, because I don't live in there, so I don't have an emotional reaction to it. I can just sort of watch it unfold. So what do you think is the best way to, community wise, to engage with community? I mean, that love that you're talking about, is that the way to do it? Just reach out. How are you doing? Bring people in.
Right, right. And so there's a few things. I wish I could turn my computer around. Right in front of me is a metal a rack. Um, it pushed me not doing this again, or not involving myself in religious practice in the Christian community, pushed me outside. And so I built a community of people in the triathlon world in my community. Um, I started running, I started cycling, I started swimming, I started hiking. And so no matter, this is so good for me, no matter what people believe, we all like being outside at some point, you know what I mean? So I literally have created a group of women, and we go hiking and go experience new outdoor experiences all the time. I do it every other month. And then another month, I do what's called a bikes and breakfast, where I get a bunch of the ladies together. We get on bikes and we ride to breakfast. We have breakfast and we ride back.
Ah, that's
It
nice.
is the most phenomenal thing. Now that I've written this book, there are a lot of people who are saying, "Me too. Thank you for saying it."
Hmm.
And so here we go. I'm going to create another community. But my plan is to invite these religious or religions or expressions of religion to come and share with those of us who are open to learning, but don't want to be exclusive.
Yeah.
So there's a young lady who got my book, who enjoys certain aspects of Jewish culture, but also embraces Jesus as the Son of God, versus the Jewish religion does not. But she loves Shabbat.
Mhm.
And so
Yeah.
what I'm so excited about creating a community where she can come and teach us about that.
Yeah.
I don't have to be Christian. I don't have to be Jewish. She can just come and teach us about that, and we can enjoy that with her. And therein lies such love and fellowship. Like,
Yeah.
this is what I've been longing and looking for. I'm excited about perhaps bringing someone from the Islamic culture to come and teach us, someone from the Sikh culture to come and teach us something about that culture and what they love about it. And let them know we embrace them despite the difference, by learning what it is they love to do and what it is they celebrate about their religion and about how they see God.
Hey, well,
Um,
listen, sign me up, because that's the solo adventure I've been on for about 15 years. So I'm
yeah,
team
yeah,
you. Yeah, I'm with you. So because
yes.
I've always been so in love with the philosophy and and speculation around religion. What does it mean? What could it be? And I used to go to. In fact, I got in some trouble with my father, which is a story for another time. But I used to go to the local mosque here I was when I was still sort of atheist, because I was
Mhm.
fascinated by what is it that you do here. The imam and I became quite close friends. because I was quite open about trying to learn and trying to study the history of his religion. And I even learned, I don't know if I've still got it logged in my brain, but I even learned the Arabic alphabet because a lot of my favorite philosophers and stuff at the time were Arabic, and I couldn't read them without understanding Arabic. I never got around to fulfilling that dream and finishing off learning the language and stuff, but that there's so much to learn there. And then, but what I also learned is that fundamentally, what we always forget and what we seem to tune out is that we're all having the exact same experience. We're having that same, we're all falling in love. We're all loving our children. We're all scared of something. We're all having these fundamental human experiences, but we ignore them because there's layers of, well, actually this label, I'm this religion label, I'm this political label, I'm this, and that flesh hides who we our core selves from each other. And I think
talking so good, Stephen. I'm telling you, I'm loving it. I mean, you say you call it labels or flesh, and I call it, in the book, I call it fig leaves. You know, the story of Adam and Eve is that they took leaves after they felt exposed and covered themselves. And it's just like that. I'm having to strip all those things apart and get to the essence and the core of who I am, and express that being every single day. I think really the only label I keep today is I am a Black woman. That's it. Other than that, if Christianity keeps me from learning who other people are and how they experience and express God, I don't want it.
Yeah, that's powerful.
I don't want it. And that's what it was doing for me. It and I can't even accept other people and how they experience God for having the assignment of converting them. You can't be a Christian and not convert. That's what you're supposed to be doing. And I think as far as I know, it is probably one of the only religions that seek to convert. I don't know of another religion that does that.
Yes, they're very prolific at that, aren't they? That's the thing that was actually the initial thing that made me think, man, if this was the true course that God wanted human theological and religious studies to take, then they wouldn't need to work so hard to convince people it was the right way to go. And I think we have this, I mean, what I was trying to say earlier really is that we have this intuitive sense of, man, there is some kind of higher power. I think there is something that we need to be grateful toward. And like I said, the religions give you a pre-made, pre-packaged architecture with which, here we go, here's how you do that. But the journey that you've been on and the journey that I've been on, and as similar as they are, I think if people were to explore the areas that we've explored and to really consider and not be so keen to join labels, like especially the atheist thing. I mean, I've got real beef with atheists, and I think that there's a real arrogance there that is completely unearned, because it's what you're doing. If you're saying, I'm an atheist, you're going, well, so the thousands of years of religious belief and practice by these wonderful minds all over the planet, I'm going to dismiss that because I can't see God and hold his hand. I mean, it's crazy, this whole thing. And I think if people were to really consider it, I think way more people, if they knew it was an option, would land where we've landed, where you go, man, there is something, I know what it is. How do I now explore that properly? And instead of landing on atheism or theism, there's a sort of mid area, that sort of deist area, where you can go, okay, what does it mean to me? What is my religious belief? Because that's what someone's done, and that's how religion started. Someone's just done that and then wrote a codex for it.
Someone, I say all the time, Moses, is standing at what he's calling a bush, and it's burning, but it's not being consumed, and he hears a voice. And then he tells everybody it was God.
Yeah.
What's wrong with you, bro? You crazy, bro. What, bro? Are you serious? Like, and all we see is the people that agreed. But somebody in all of Israel, in all of those, those that escaped, escaped slavery, somebody said,
yeah, they did. I bet that's true. Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
not it's not in the book. And so he called it God. It's just not, we're not reading it, but somebody was saying, bruh, it's crazy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so there is this identifying that which we cannot control, especially phenomena that is good or works in our favor. We're saying it's God, and it doesn't mean that it is or is not.
Yeah.
So they're crossing through a Red Sea after it split open, and so it has to be something else outside of us that caused that. Let's call it God. Let's call it something. And so they took that right to do that. So I'm going to take mine and figure out and learn what I believe to be God. When you hear me talk, I say, I believe I heard God say. I believe I heard a voice, and I assigned that voice to God. I assigned that inspiration to God. And so, yeah, it is that, as you say, deist, that between that deist area where you pursue life and pursue experiencing life being a blank canvas, versus, like you say, that pre-packaged God being available to the omniscient, showing you itself, himself, herself, themselves, whatever, in ways you've never experienced and perhaps no one else has ever experienced.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And I think this particular philosophy is helpful because there's no toxic sort of role models in it. I mean, you don't have to, you can read the Bible or any sort of religious text really and get to a point where you go, that's a questionable thing that person did, or that's a questionable thing that God did. And this God that, is remarkably human for a thing that is so powerful. And I think, but this philosophy, you're able to go, okay, well, what you can do is you can interpret that as an all too human description of what God is. I mean, I've always had this idea, and I call it God's philosophy shield, where the second you start to properly perceive, or the second you start to wonder what God is, the further away from what God could be you find yourself, because because every tool that you're using is a human tool. So, I mean, we know that there's spectrums of light and sound and stuff, or especially light, that we can't properly perceive because we don't have the physical tools to do so. And I think once you start to think, man, what is God? What could God mean? I think God, the philosophy shield idea is that, and that second you start to wonder that, God's protected from you finding out what he is, because you're using human devices. And I think that's an interesting way to consider it, because then you're left to go, well, Joe, I can personalize God to a healthy degree by saying, well, it's something that actually, in times where I'm feeling grief or sadness or loneliness, this thing still comforts me, and that's fine, and that's great. And I understand why religions would spring from that, because it's such a necessary human thing, especially in cultures where there's war and it's a terrible place to be, and it's every day is a struggle. I can see why religion would be very helpful. I mean, we spoke to a woman a couple of weeks ago on this show who she'd lost both of her daughters, 3 and 7 years of age, in a flash flood. And I was fascinated, because she said without her faith, she might not have survived that ordeal herself, the grief and the pain. And I thought, man, that's the power of religion, really, because it doesn't really matter how you dress it up or what God's wearing or what you're doing. That faith that she had is an important part of who we are as humans. If you had that God reflex, I used to call it when I was a kid, where if I dropped rubbish on the floor because of the way it's sort of conditioned, I'd go, oh, God's going to be really pissed off that I throw a Coke can on the floor. And I think that reflex can sometimes be harmful, but also be very useful, because it conditions you to try and be better, because you feel like you're trying to impress, or you're trying to serve God in some way. So I appreciate faith. I just think I want people to feel much more free and exploring what it means to them, not what it means to their family or their neighbors or traditions. You know what I mean?
I think the distinction that may need to be made is there's a distinction between religion and faith. So that's it for me. So I definitely understand having faith, and I even understand religion introducing faith.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah. But at the same time, their religion has some, often, as far as I can see and observe, has this way of being exclusive to its own belief.
Yeah.
So it can
That's
be
a lovely
that,
way to put that. That's
yeah.
very, yeah, yeah. You're bang
So
on.
there's a difference between believing and a difference between practicing belief. And so for me, it's the practicing of the belief that separates us from each other. It's how I choose to
Yeah,
practice what I believe, how I choose to express what I believe. And then to say, because you don't express what I believe the same way I believe it, then you're different. You go there, i.e., I wish everyone was a Jew.
yeah,
What? Like, that mindset is religion versus love or faith, in my opinion.
yeah.
And
I'm right there
so,
with you. I wasn't expecting to. I didn't, because I obviously knew a little bit about your story, but hadn't quite jumped in with 2 feet. And now, because I've been trying to, we've recorded 6 episodes in about 4 days, so it's been a
wow.
busy lot of research, and I wasn't expecting us to land on such common ground, and I'm very glad, because I've never actually had this conversation out loud. Yeah, because my friends are either atheist or don't care, or one or two are heavily religious and don't appreciate my what they see as me trying to strip away everything that
Yeah.
comforts them, which I'm not trying to do. I'm just trying to say you don't have to feel so much pressure from your mother. You don't have to feel so much pressure from your parents. You can just you can love God the way that you want to, and that's
Right.
perfectly fine.
Right.
Yeah,
The way that you can most relate to.
yeah,
My favorite way to love God is to be outside. I love to be out there where it's limitless, up where omniscience seems to be more present to me. That's one of my favorite ways. And my other favorite way is to really seriously extend my hand to neighbors, to people I don't know, to sit at tables with people I've never met before, and ask of them who they are, what they think, what they believe, and still walk away. I said last night in another interview, if you look at my social media, you wouldn't know that I'm ordained. I don't have a collar on, in any of my photos. I actually don't even own one. You wouldn't know that I have a license or I have a degree in biblical studies. I'm not parking in a parking spot that says Reverend Chandrika.
mm,
And so it blesses me to learn who people are, to introduce myself, and walk away having no agenda to change, but to have offer a space where people and myself can go back and forth and expressing our humanness, expressing our authenticity, and being in that place of freedom, judgment free, all of that. I mean, my heart is to one day own a property that I can transform into a place of fellowship where anybody can come at any hour of the day. And by that, I mean having hours every day, not just Sundays, not just Wednesday night Bible studies, but can come as Muslim, as Jewish people, as whatever those expressions are, and just fellowship with other people who are there, not even like-minded people. Just go find a seat, have a cup of coffee, and have a conversation.
yeah. I think that's one of the most beautiful expressions of faith, and one of the most almost logical, isn't it? Realistic that I've heard. It really resonates with me. And I think with me, on a personal note, I think where I find I feel most connected with, whatever it is that I'm trying to connect with, is when I'm with my son, being a
Yes,
father, because
yes,
I find when when I'm considering how I'm going to prepare him for being an adult, I think, how do I do that? And is the world better served if he's educated in certain things? Who does he want to be? What's the best way to raise him? But when I'm really loving him, and when I'm looking after him when he's sick, and when I'm there at 3 a.m. with him, that's for some, I don't know what it is, but my son, it seems to be for me a conduit of whatever it is I'm experiencing. That's so profound,
Right.
and and that's what's changed me. That's what's made me ever so more, slightly more spiritual, is becoming a father.
Yes, I
Uh,
like that. I
yeah.
like that. You know,
Mm.
I've said before, you know, here in the States and particularly in Black churches, we're always after this experience of the glory of God. You
Mm.
know, I'll give you two examples. But you know, we're always after that. We want the glory, send the glory, oh God. And we want this whole
I'm feeling
you
it.
know,
So
we want this whole phenomenal sweeping of this God experience. And you know, I've used examples before. We in our effort to get to that gathering of experiencing the glory, we have missed experiencing the glory of waking up your child. I literally have said that.
yeah.
Going in to wake your child up, watching their eyes blink, hearing them say good morning.
Hmm.
That is the glory of God. That is the the wonder of God. And you miss that and miss being grateful for that, trying to get to the gathering
Mm.
to have this experience of the glory. I remember and I'm the same, you know, I'm more so you know, enjoying the outdoors. The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, and they that dwell therein, and the expression of God in the earth. And I pull out of my driveway with my bike, and I'm ready to get outside and enjoy the wind blowing in my hair and hearing what I believe to be the voice of God in the wind, and fellowshipping with my friends, and the sound of clicking in and out of our pedals, and the shoo 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 shoo, you know, just I'm just ready to get there, right? I go and I enjoy it. We After that, we have a good lunch. I'm full, I'm happy, I am fulfilled or reminded or reflective of my fullness. I come around the corner to come home, and there's this beautiful tree blooming. I mean, gorgeous red bright tree blooming on my block. And I'm like, wow, that's in my yard. I didn't drove past this beautiful expression of the glory of God trying to get to.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I know.
so,
That's perfect. I
you
agree with
know
you.
what I'm
That's
saying? And
yeah.
so in that moment of of you know, being with your son and having that and being so aware of what you're feeling in that moment, it's okay to believe that that is an expression, if you will, of the love of God, I think.
Yeah. Well, these things, these I mean, with sort of modern psychology and the way we are now sort of learning to live on a human basis. So the things that they say are important for your mental health, something they always say is practice gratitude, and they say all these tools that we have that are enable us to sort of function in this time where we're sort of all mentally ill, and it's difficult to be human nowadays. There's a lot of input, and I don't think we've properly evolved to process the world as it is now. But
Hmm.
I think all those are things that also exist in lessons in religious practice. And I think that's for a reason, because you can you can take a minute to pause and be grateful to God, or you can just pause and take a minute to be grateful, because that's just as powerful. I mean,
Right.
I practice that all the time because I try and be a good partner, I try and be a good father, but that's a deliberate exercise. It's an intentional thing I do every day, where I go, I'm very grateful for my partner, very grateful for my son, I'm grateful for this, and to myself or to God. It doesn't really matter. I don't know who I'm sort of trying to commune with in that moment, myself or whatever, some version of myself. But I think these practices, there's there's a lot of good in religious practice, and it's just the way you use it. I mean, you've got all these wonderful tools from studying Christianity and from studying other religions. So, do you still use those tools in your sort of day-to-day life? As in, the lessons learned? Do you still have verses from the Bible come to mind to help you through certain things? Stories that you go, well, you might go, well, I'm not Job. I'm doing right this week. Do you use that? Do you is it still important to you? Do you still use those lessons?
I think that's a great question. No.
Okay. Well,
No.
thanks.
I don't. And I say that because, again, what I write in the book is that these stories became what they were without the help of a tool. Without the help of a tool that I'm using, they came to be. In other words, the Bible we are reading from, these stories from, these people didn't have it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
They only had the experience of life and the experience of the parts of life they had no control over. And they had or took the right to call it God.
Mm-hmm.
They took the freedom to call it God. David, in Psalms, David writes, I was born in sin, shaped in iniquity. Well, that's his right to believe that about himself. But he said, I was born. Western Christianity teaches we were born.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
It's a rough
so,
start.
David wasn't even talking about everybody. He's having his own conversation about himself.
Mm-hmm.
And Christianity has owned it and sold it to the masses, and it contributes, the belief of it contributes to the system of Christianity, the revolving door of it all. And so if they were allowed to have personal experiences of this phenom called God, then why wouldn't I be allowed the same? So no, I'm pursuing my own experience. I do believe it to be evidence of something greater. But I don't believe it was meant for me to study their evidence.
Yeah.
What we're reading is a result of their experience of life and their experience of what they believe to be God. It is their experience. It's a result of their experience, what we're reading. So a result of Michael Jackson's experience of a woman is a song. Billie Jean in my love, she's just a girl. Or if he wrote it, if somebody else wrote it, it's not, we're not privy to, by listening to the song, we're not privy to the experience, we're privy to the result of the experience. We're experiencing what the inspiration. And so I write about the interpretation of inspiration and how that is an inward phenomenon. It's a personal phenomenon. And because it's personal, the person experiencing the inspiration has the responsibility of interpreting it. Well, it's not for me to ignore my experience of inspiration to study theirs.
Yeah. Hey. Yeah. 100%. I completely agree with you.
You know what I'm saying? So it is for me to interpret have my own experience, be inspired by that, and then interpret it. Now, why I'm here is this. This is a result of my inspiration. This is my interpretation of what inspired me. And so I feel the same thing with these tools or with these verses. If they were able to have a conversation with God, write down these things, why can't I do the same thing?
Yeah, that's true. That's a great point.
Yeah, that I think if it was their inheritance, why isn't it mine?
Yeah. That's a wonderful thing. Yeah, I'm going to consider that. In fact, that's a wonderful question. Yeah, that's a great thing to. I really appreciate that that way to think about it. Listen, before I don't want to. I could probably talk to you all night. To be honest, I don't want to. But I must go see my partner because she's. I could hear about 20 minutes ago. I could hear my son stirring, so I want to make sure that he's asleep and peaceful, and I'm not letting her mother alone. But I
do want to ask you that question though. Remember?
Oh wait, so all right. Let me just. I can edit this bit out. Let me message my partner, make sure she's happy and well a second.
Okay.
and then I'll know that she doesn't need me to do any immediate fathering. Then we can continue from there.
I don't think it's a hard question though. I don't think it's anything deep.
That's all right. I'm. Oh yeah, she's messaged. She's fine. Okay. So yeah, so in our email exchange, you said that you had a question for me. So please.
So the King James version of the Bible is, as far as when I last checked, is the most popular, most sold Bible in the world. So having the experience of writing a book and going through publishing and publishing agreements and royalty agreements, that experience inspired me to look up who gets the royalties from the Bible. It's the royal family.
Well, would you look at that?
Would you? The crown gets the royalties from the King James version. And then I believe if there's a company who wants to reinterpret or create another version of that book, I believe they have to make an agreement with whomever manages the royalties or whatever from the original, from the King James version, I believe. Wow. So my question is, Christianity teaches the Bible is inherent. Mm-hmm. It is the inherent word of God. My question is do you think those who profit from it believe it's the inherent word of God?
No, I think that what you've seen there is the way of, you're seeing almost the development of the organism, because it's surviving without, like, say, the crown, for example. I didn't know that, by the way, and that's going to take some pondering, because that means the crown is served by the propagation of Christianity, and that which is that's shady territory, I suppose. So that's what they've done, is they've made the crown a self-sustaining organism, as long as there is money being made on Christianity being propagated culturally, which is but I mean there is a tide of atheism in the country, so there is a warring nature. So I don't know, that's a wonderful question. I'm going to have to consider that and get back to you. But I mean, I think I don't see, I mean, I know that the royal family, I know they have religious practices in that they attend ceremonies. I know that but I don't know, they're not that open about it, I don't think. So what a wonderful question. I'm going to take that as a gift, and I'm going to ponder it. So.
I've shared that question with several of my friends, and we just, in our soul air in space, in that we just thought, of course they don't believe it's inherent.
Yeah, it wouldn't need. Yeah, no, and the key word inherent there.
Yes, that's the key word.
Yeah,
but are they profiting off of our perspective or Christianity's perspective of it being inherent?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I see what you mean. Yeah, you're right, because it wouldn't. I mean, the worry is
believes it to be inherent, but the crown gets the royalties from our belief of it.
Yeah, I mean, when I consider the sort of Roman era, and I consider how, when I think about empire, or I think about big civilizations, and I think, what's the best way, if I was in charge of one of those civilizations, to control the civilization, right? To control, let's say I'm an emperor, how do I control Rome and keep the fear? And a lot of that is if I don't have to work too hard, if I can make people believe in this awful place called hell, where if you do something bad, that's where you're going. And so you need to make sure you live your life in a way that you're straying away from that direction. And that way, like I said before, that's a self-sustaining organism in that people are now controlling themselves because of this idea of propagated. And I wonder if this whole of the crown receiving money from the King James Bible, motherfucker, I don't know, but I mean, it must be.
I love it. So listen, we have to do this again.
This is great.
I think we have to do this again. But and you just let me know. But yeah, he's King James the whatever. So he's in the line of the royal family. He's a part of the family. And so they get the royalties. I Googled it several times. I'm just like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Surely they don't. I knew they couldn't be believing that the Bible is inerrant. It is the only word of God. But if they don't believe it, they profit from other people believing it.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's because then it almost you almost enter a sort of thought space where you see it then doesn't matter if they believe it or not, because it's a business. And then religion as business is dangerous, because then you are, what is the best environment? Let's say you're the leader. Let's say you were the crown, or you were in charge of the UK. You're prime minister, or you're some kind of shadowy government that really runs space. Whoever's in charge. What is the best way to make sure people do what you want them to do? I mean, you could you implement laws, and prison is a good incentive to not want to do that sort of thing. And then I suppose you don't want I'm going off to a scary place here, but you would say it would be beneficial to the crown if people weren't so educated that they knew to explore other religious options. And so what would that mean? Oh God, I'm going to have another glass of wine in a minute and reconsider it.
Stephen, you are saying so much that I've already known and studied that you hadn't even studied.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
I mean, there's stuff out there about King James and why he, may have did what he did, or chose the books that he chose, and chose maybe perhaps even languages, and how the King James Version came about, and how strategic he was in choosing who to put it together, all of that. And so you, without knowing any of that, you have tapped into it.
I've always found that fascinating in the, was it the Council of Nicaea, or the original, the where they tried to do we make people perceive Jesus as a man or as God? I mean, I always thought that was a really fascinating. I mean, because that is evidence of and organizations and this sort of coming together of clerics and priests and saying, how do we want people to perceive Jesus and perceive what God is? And when I first heard that, I thought, man, that is manipulative, because that's not what God or Jesus actually is. That's what they want you to think that he is, because it makes sense for them. If you thought Jesus was the Son of God and therefore powerful, then you would have a different relationship with him to if he was just a man.
Right.
And I think I loved the things like the Dead Sea Scrolls and all these stories that never quite made it into the King James Bible. And I think I remember reading one where Jesus came across as a mischievous sort of Loki character, where he's got these sort of magical powers, and he's sort of a bit, and I thought, man, there's a reason that's not canonical biblical text. And so, but with knowing that these exist, and you always hear rumors that in the Vatican there is texts and there's endless sort of things that could have made it into the Bible but didn't. And I think if that turns out to be true, which I suspect it is, there you go. Well, actually, then everything about Christianity is prepackaged and made for you, and it's not yours; it's theirs. And but they need you to believe it now, apparently, because it's profitable for the crown.
Right. It's big business, and so so there you go. You get to where you understand these things, and you start taking it off. Like, well, shoot. Well, then I'm back to this place of curiosity. I am now where my students were when I introduced them to Christianity. They were a blank slate. I could have told them anything.
Yeah.
because they knew nothing other than whatever their parents taught them about anything greater than, themselves. And
Mm.
so, I'm now that slate. I'm now back to asking questions, and actually, it is where I thrive the most.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
whatever my relationship with whomever or whatever is greater than me, it thrives at the point or the place of curiosity, asking questions. And I
Yeah.
wanted to say something to you too about, making us believe what Jesus is. Or I write in my book an entry called "The Dismissal of a Distinction," where in three books of the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, in three of those books, Jesus says to a young man, "Why do you call me God or good? I'm sorry, why do you call me good?" He said, "No one is good but God."
Mm.
So the guy says, "Good master." He said, "Don't call me good. No one is good but God." So he makes a distinction between himself and God. It's in three books.
Yeah.
And so I asked the question, who decided, if Jesus is disowning being God, who decided he was? I mean, like, who said that he was? If I mean, when this is clearly Jesus making a distinction between himself and God. No one is good but God.
Ay, ay, ay.
So the young man, according to the story, the young man responds in, I think, every version of it. He then responds with master. He takes the good off.
Right.
He received apparently what Jesus is saying, but
I hear
Christianity, on the other hand, is like, Jesus didn't know himself. We knew him better.
you. Yeah. Yeah. Well, hey, that I've got a lot to consider. I mean, my friends and family will tell you. I mean, when I told them about our episode and what we're going to be sort of talking about with God and what is God and that sort of thing, they said, because normally I do this with a co-host. His name's Kevin. And he said, "That sounds like an episode you want to do by yourself." And I thought, yeah, I think so, because this is a journey. I'm locally in my sort of relationships. I'm sort of unique in this journey that I've been on, because I haven't really had anyone to talk to, because my partner's perfect and she's very good at listening, but she hasn't had that trajectory. She doesn't really care either way whether there's a God or not, which, and that sort of apathy, for me, that represents Britain in a way when it comes to religious belief. Is sort of, well, I don't think so, probably not, and that's sort of way, which Bush to Crown aren't happy with, because they they want to be making some money. But I mean, but I think I've really loved talking to you tonight about this. I think it's and I've got a lot to think about, because actually that part of my brain where I was traveling Europe to study religions and to study what I thought God could be, and then because since becoming a father and having to work and run the business, I've actually sort of put that discussion and philosophizing in my head to one side. So it's actually really nice. I feel quite inspired to get back to work, get back to studying. So I'm very grateful for you for giving that to me. So
Yeah, thank you for having me. Don't forget my book, everybody.
well, so where can we find you? Where can my listeners find you? Where can we find you on your social media? Where can we get your book? Tell us everything.
So I'm on Instagram, on Facebook. I am on Twitter, and sometime on TikTok. But my name is Chandrika Phea on all those platforms. It is Chandrika. My middle initial is D, and my last name is P as in Paul, Hea. And so, yeah, follow me. You can get the book on Amazon. You can get the book at Barnes and Noble, Books a Million. I don't know what the spots are for your area, but I'm sure Amazon is definitely a great go-to. So yeah, the book is there. Find me on Facebook, ask me questions, have me back. I'm willing to come back and continue this conversation.
Oh yeah. You consider yourself a friend of the show. I'd love to talk to you again. Well, listen, on behalf of me and my audience, I'm very, very grateful, and thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you for having me. Thank you, audience, for having me and for listening.
Thank
This
you.
has been a pleasure.